Welcome to episode 100 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who took me to a Colts game yesterday.
Yep.
John Scott Sloat.
Yep. We went to a Colts game yesterday.
We did. Well,
and it's episode 100 also. Which feels big.
It is a big deal. I think this one might go a little longer than our normal 40 to 45. We've got an aggressive agenda, I think, in front of us here.
And the time to do it.
Yeah. Yes. We have managed to block out time of our busy schedules to make this happen. So let's get some of the preliminaries out of the way here. You can find us on Twitter at V&S Pod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube, Various and Sundry Podcast. And we would love for you to go on to whatever platform you use to access the show and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. So, John, we should probably jump right into our sports segment because there's a lot that's happened in the world of sports.
It's been a busy holiday weekend.
Yes,
for sports.
Yes, it was. So, let's start with the NFL.
Okay.
Tell us about your JETS Jets.
Ugly win against a bad team in Houston.
But it still counts as
it's
a win.
It's still a W.
Is that number 3 on the year?
3 on the year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, any teams? How many wins does Houston have? Do they just have one?
1 or 2. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because are you? So at this point, are you hoping more for wins, or are you hoping, hey, let's just actually tank for the rest of the year and try to get a high draft pick? Where are you at on that spectrum?
So I'm probably more at the I want to see them put together consistent good games.
Okay.
They may lose those games. They may win those games. Either way, I think we're getting a top 10 pick out of this season. So I'm not concerned about, if I'm taking a quarterback, I want to be in the top 5. If I'm taking, but I just don't think we're at that spot. What I'm more watching is the Seattle Seahawks because we also have their first round pick.
All right.
And right now the Seattle Seahawks have 3 wins.
There you go.
So that's also a top 10 pick at the moment. I don't think Russell Wilson is fully healthy.
No.
And they're not playing that well.
Yeah. Do you think this is the end of the marriage between Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll?
Yeah. I think Pete Carroll might be done after this year.
Could be.
Because he doesn't want to go through a rebuild. He's in his 70s.
He's old.
You realize he's that old?
Yeah. He's old.
And Russell Wilson, I think, is on another team next year.
Really?
I think so.
You think he's moving on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first. Around the rest of the league.
Well, do we need to talk about the Colts game yesterday?
You want to do that here at this point in the show?
I mean, it was yesterday.
It's up to you. I mean, it's just as much your podcast as mine.
Well, we can talk about it later. Yeah. Where do you want to talk about it?
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking that there might be a segment later in the show that might.
Oh, I see. Sorry. It's right at the top. The Colts lose.
Yeah.
It's on the rundown twice. Yeah. Okay. My bad. Okay. Let's go to Saturday, day before.
Yes, we must. And it finally happened. Ohio State lost to the team up north.
First time in 10 years.
10 years.
And second time in 20. Is that right?
So third time in 20 years.
Third time in 20. Okay.
Yeah. 2004, 2011, and now this year.
Talk to me about the emotions. Talk to me about the state of your house.
Yeah, Saturday was a pretty dark day in the Harmon household. And I think this might surprise some people. I think my wife took it harder than me. And yeah, I mean, I was not super confident going into the game. And I think that early on it became apparent that we were in some trouble just because, and this was what ended up costing us the game. Michigan owned the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
And so they came out and just what was deeply disappointing was the fact that it was clear what Michigan was going to try to do. They came into the game basically saying, "We're just going to run the ball down your throat." There was maybe a little creativity, but not much.
Sure.
It was just power running. And despite the fact that we knew it was coming, we couldn't stop it. And there was a stretch from the middle of the second quarter all the way through the end of the game where Michigan scored touchdowns on every drive. Even though we knew they're just going to run the ball. Occasional rare passing, but they're just going to run. They threw 5 passes in the second half. And they still scored touchdowns on every drive. They just rammed it down our throats. And the only sort of positive that I see coming out from this is I hope that this means some wholesale changes on the defensive coaching staff. That this will be the straw. I mean, we saw this earlier in the year with Oregon where the defense was just a mess. And while there were signs of improvement to be sure, it's clear that the defensive side of the ball needs a complete overhaul in the coaching staff, maybe with the exception of keeping their defensive line coach Larry Johnson. Other than that, I think every defensive coach has to go. They have to start over, have to start from scratch.
Now, what factor, if any, did the weather play? Because Ohio State's hallmark is their offense this year, and it just didn't necessarily get clicking at any point during the game. What was it? Was it the weather that played a factor?
Well, Ohio State struggled to run the ball. Passing the ball, they were fine. I mean, C.J. Stroud threw for nearly 400 yards. He was 34 of 49 for just under 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not. It was basically line play that killed us. So we couldn't run the ball, and we couldn't stop the run. So my hope is that Ryan Day looks at this and goes, "All right, yep, I need to totally rebuild my defensive coaching staff. The talent's there. It's just the coaching has not been good enough." So we'll see. I'm hopeful that he will do that at the end of the year he will clean some house defensively and start over with that, but we shall see.
Tell me about the Big Ten championship.
So that's Michigan against Iowa.
Any prediction there?
Well, they're 2 pretty similar teams. Here's the big question for me. Everything Michigan was doing was building up to this game, the Ohio State game.
Do they have a letdown game?
Is there a letdown?
Yeah.
Big emotional win over a rival they haven't beaten in 10 years. And they've never been to the Big Ten championship game. Is there a letdown? Is there just a sort of, a letdown, I guess is the best word for it.
Yeah.
To see if that happens. And, so it was just a chaotic college football weekend in general. Alabama should have lost to Auburn. Did you see any of this?
I did not. I saw it was a close game in overtime.
Auburn dominated the game, whole game. They are up 10-3. They have the ball with less than 2 minutes left. And if they run the clock out properly, they can kick it back to Bama with 20 seconds left on the clock. So they run on first down, Bama calls timeout. They run on second down, Bama's only got 1 timeout left. The running back runs out of bounds. Here's your free timeout. That cost them 40 seconds on the game clock. And Bama scored with 20 seconds left in the game after they got the ball back to tie it, send it to overtime. Auburn gave them the game. So if you're a Bama fan at this point, you're like, you have no realistic reason to be optimistic against Georgia. Every sign points to. I mean, again, Saban's a great coach; they have talent, but it's just I can't see them beating Georgia. But Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma, and then probably the biggest news in the college football weekend, honestly, Oklahoma's coach Lincoln Riley
leaves
Oklahoma and is hired at USC. All the speculation was him being hired at LSU.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was asked after the game, and he said, this is so shady. He said, "I am not going to be the coach of LSU." True statement.
That's very particular. Yeah.
But apparently no one thought to ask him, "Are you going to be the coach at USC?"
Or anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere other than Oklahoma.
Yeah. So just a very intriguing, Oklahoma fans losing their mind, etc. But this upcoming weekend, championship weekend, sets up to be very fascinating because you could still have enormous chaos. Notre Dame is in good shape to back their way into the playoff.
Without playing a game.
This weekend. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Now that my team's eliminated, now I'm absolutely rooting for chaos. I mean, some are even trying to say, well, there's a scenario where Ohio State with 2 losses gets in. No, I don't see it.
Yeah.
In any case, it's fascinating. It'll be fun to watch. It reminds me of the line from one of the Dark Knight movies. Some people just want to watch the world burn. I want to watch the college football world burn this weekend.
Okay. Wow. Things got dark.
It did.
Real quick.
What about your Knicks?
Knicks beat the Lakers this week, lost to the Suns, and then beat somebody else this weekend. So like a 2-1 week. So
okay.
So they're still trying to figure themselves out, I think.
All right.
There's talk of benching Kemba Walker because he's just not playing very well, and putting in second-year player Emmanuel Quickley, who I think was at Kentucky. Maybe I got that wrong.
Kentucky or Duke guy? I can't remember.
I thought it was Kentucky. Maybe I'm wrong. But because he's just playing lights out, and there's a lot of calls, at least on Twitter, which there's always a lot of calls on Twitter, to put him in the starting lineup. So,
Indeed.
Probably the biggest New York sports news, I think I'm comfortable saying that, is the Mets right now, the baseball team. And, first of all, lockout's going to happen like December 3rd.
So do you think that's actually going to happen, or do you think they're going to get something in place to –
I think it'll happen for a little bit.
Okay.
I hope, knock on wood, we don't miss any spring training or season next year. But the Mets have been, I think, the most active free agent team. And when you have the richest owner, that
helps. That's
something you can do. But we signed 4 guys this week. Well, I guess 5. So 1 bench player.
Mm-hmm.
We signed 3 everyday players, probably starters. One of them being Starling Marte, who is very, very good. The other 2 guys are solid hitters.
Mm-hmm.
And then the big one that just became official right before we went on the air was the Mets got Max Scherzer, Mad Max, who is the guy, the pitcher with 2 different. His eyes are 2 different colors.
Oh, really?
Did you know this about him?
I did not.
Yeah, he has one eye that's one color and one eye that's another color. And they say that's part of his advantage when he pitches because he's horrifying.
Okay.
But he's also a very good pitcher.
Yeah.
And he last year said to the Nationals, who he was playing for, he said, "Don't trade me to New York. I don't want to go to New York." Well, New York rolled up and paid him and offered him $43 million a year for 3 years.
Yeah.
And he signed on.
I can't even really wrap my brain around making $43 million a year.
A year, yeah.
Now, I realize that he probably pays 60% of that in taxes, so his take-home money is far less than that. And then you throw an agent fee, and so out of 43, he's still probably walking home with. Is he walking home with 18?
Yeah,
18
something like that,
which is still nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone wanted to offer me $18 million in take-home pay, I'd have to strongly consider it.
Yeah, you'd have to. But it's been exciting. We lost in free agency early. We lost a couple of players, but we've clearly made up for it.
Yes.
So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun week.
Yeah. So there's your update in the world of sports. We finally have arrived, John.
Talking about episode 100.
100.
Which is just us talking about ourselves, really.
Well, sort of. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. So we know that our listeners join in at various points. Obviously, not everyone has been here for the whole ride. Mm-hmm. We do know we have some faithful, long-term listeners who've been here for the entirety of the show. But
yep.
I wanted to start by let's kind of remind our audience of the origins of the podcast. How did the idea even arise for us to be doing this?
Well, as memory serves, and maybe this is some good background to our relationship, but I was your student here at Grace. Mm-hmm. Went away to Southern for a year.
Got a year of exile. Yeah.
Got a degree there, and then returned to be a resident director, and would come over to your house just about every Sunday to do lunch, watch football, watch sports, whatever was on, interacting with your family, and just all around having a good time.
Yeah.
And you and I would have conversations in the basement for probably one or two good ones a week down there, where we're just talking about cultural moments, sports, just anything. And your boy Jake was down there listening, and I think he suggested it. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not always sure how much credit to give him. He definitely deserves some credit for the idea.
He certainly pushed when the idea was out there.
Yes. He certainly gets credit for pushing the idea. I remember him saying, "You guys should do a podcast," and the two of us kind of looking at each other like, "Well, what will we talk about?" And he's like, "This is the podcast. Like, you guys talking about sports, theology, culture, ministry, that sort of thing." And initially, I think we were kind of like, "Yeah, well, okay, but we were in no position to do one because we didn't have. First of all, we didn't really know, like, well, what kind of equipment do you need? How does that work?"
Yep.
And then, lo and behold, our dean here came in with podcasting equipment
and experience.
Yeah. So that was a pretty key piece of moving it from, that's kind of a fun idea, to actually I think we could do this. This might be doable.
Yeah.
So then you remember we did a few practice episodes.
Yeah. That was that spring, or that was fall 19?
Fall of 19. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what a world.
Yeah, a completely different world in some respects.
We had a long conversation about Kanye. I think that was a practice episode where we talked about Kanye.
Yeah, that's right.
For like an hour.
Yes.
Goodness.
Yeah, we had no idea what we were doing, but then we finally dropped our preview episode.
Yeah, December.
In mid-December of 19. And that was basically us just talking about what we were going to do on the podcast. It was like, 15 minutes maybe?
Yeah, 10 to 12 probably.
Yeah.
Our most downloaded episode to date.
Yeah.
Also, I might add.
So then come the first week of January in 2020, we did our initial episode 1. Do you remember what our
goodness.
What was our topic? Do you remember this?
I think it was it resolutions and books? What was that, the topic of books we're hoping to read this year, resolutions we're making?
Resolutions, books, and Oscar Robertson.
Oscar.
Well done. Yeah. Yeah, looking back, so that one dropped January 7th. So that was the first real episode that we had there. January 7th, 2020. So that's kind of how the podcast began. And obviously it's morphed over the course of 100 episodes. John, any big surprises in doing the podcast now for almost 2 years? We're basically 23 months in.
Yeah. I think I'm always surprised when somebody's listening. I think that always shocks me when I run into somebody, hey, listen to your pod, or somebody I don't know emails me and go, hey, big fan of the pod or something like that. I'm just like, why?
Yeah. I think that's one of the surprises for me. I think the other is that we've done this every week.
Yeah, it's an impressive feat.
I mean that's not. We did not set out expecting to do that.
It was we have COVID. Let's do this every week, right?
I mean the original idea I think was let's do like the first 5 or 6 weeks. Like let's get off to a start where we do every week to kind of build some momentum. And then we'll probably scale back to one every other week. Mm-hmm. And then COVID hit. Yep. And we're like, well, I mean, we can. We might as well.
We have the time. Yeah.
We've got the time. And, then we figured out the whole, doing it through Zoom. And like, okay, well, so we can still quarantine and do this and make that work. So, and we, for 100 straight weeks, have produced content.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about some challenges. I mean, that's one of them, obviously.
Yeah.
Recording every week.
And then getting in the frame of mind to be in here because this plops right in the middle of our Monday usually. At least this semester it does.
Yeah. This semester, we've been doing Monday afternoon recordings. Mm-hmm. So it is it can be a challenge to shift gears from the grind of whatever we're doing that day, teaching, meetings, etc. I think just along with that, coming up with content.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We meet. How often do we meet to do content? Is it?
Gosh.
Probably every 2 or 3 months. We
should probably we need to do better at doing that more consistently to get out in front of it.
Yeah.
I think one of my least favorite things is if we don't do that, then it's like Sunday afternoon.
And you and I are texting
We're texting back and forth.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
What are we going to talk about this week?
Are we just doing another parable this week?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So.
Yes. And usually those content meetings are, all right, what do we want to talk about? And I feel like I just throw ideas out there and you respond to them. And you're like, I like that, don't like that. I like that, I don't like that.
I think that's somewhat fair. Though at times we have worked in lunches into those.
Yes.
And that's, taking –
I enjoy food. One time we got really sick. Do you remember that?
Yes.
We went and discussed the pod over lunch and
at a local restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then we came home and we were both sick for about –
You got it worse than me though.
I think I was down 36 hours.
Yeah, I had a much milder version, but still the stomach being off experience, and it totally took you out.
Yes, it did.
So thankfully that didn't fall in a window where we needed to record because
we could have done Zoom. We could have done a Zoom recording. Yeah. We could have hit pause.
Stitched it together. Yeah. What are some other challenges you think we've faced in doing this?
I think the equipment itself has been a challenge at times, where the equipment will pick up radio station frequencies that I'm told don't come through to everybody else, but you and I can hear them.
Yeah.
And so that's been a challenge. Also, people walking in on us or –
Yes, we did have one coworker in particular. So our studio, this is actually the second studio.
This is the second studio, yeah.
Doubles as a storage closet, a large storage closet that was a former vault.
Yes.
We're not joking when we call it the Vault Studio because until this summer, right? Or no, just a couple
ago. Yeah, maybe a month ago. Yeah.
The door to get in here was an actual bank vault kind of door that had the whole combination and everything. And that door has finally been removed and a standard door has been put in. But this is also a storage closet where I think I've joked about this. This is probably the largest private collection of my works.
Yes.
In existence.
Uh-huh.
So copies of my books that we use for giveaways at Grace, other marketing materials for seminary programs and stuff like that. So yeah, it also doubles, of course, as the podcast studio.
And no heating vents in here.
No, it's often very cold, including today. Did you open it up early?
I did not.
Okay.
Somebody did.
Yeah. And they have tried to make it a little bit more studio-like. They've put like curtains now over the shelves, and they've put what looks like
sound absorbers to diminish echo.
Yeah, it looks like a mattress pad, though, right?
Yeah,
it's just been kind of stuck to the wall.
Yep.
That's supposed to help keep the sound in here, but
that might be another surprise. Is occasionally you and I walk in and there's new equipment, and all of a sudden on the fly we got to figure out how does this work? How do I use this?
Yeah, that's true. I will say we also struggle sometimes with the ambient noise, not just from the equipment, but from our surroundings.
Yep.
This is not as well. So in the previous studio, which is barely 10 feet away from where we are right now.
That's right. Yeah.
It had windows. It was more susceptible to outside noise. So we would get the lawnmower. We'd get the leaf blower. We'd get that.
We'd get the cackling student out there laughing at a joke or something.
Yes. And we also got, which we still get that in this studio, is in the basement level. So we're on the first floor of this building. The basement level is where our worship arts program is housed.
Yep.
And so you've got students down there practicing.
Playing the drums,
guitar, piano, that oftentimes will float through the floor into our studio there. But and I think the last challenge is just the reality that we have to avoid certain subjects.
Mm-hmm.
The number one rule of the podcast is don't get fired.
Yes. And some of us will keep it anonymous. Some of us have been approached by administration not to bring up certain subjects or not to tweet about certain subjects.
Yes. That's true.
We'll keep that anonymous.
Yes, we will. Because, one thing we kind of hinted at this, but the podcast originated out of our friendship and us talking about lots of things. Some of them controversial, and some of them that, quite frankly, if we talked about on the podcast, could just be a little uncomfortable.
Yep.
You and I both have views on lots of issues that, just in the interest of maintaining our employment, we think it's better not to put that on the air.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm sure our listeners have probably noticed that we tend to avoid talking about politics.
Yes.
And some of the more sensitive cultural issues we also tend to avoid.
Well, and we also chose, I think, the most polarized time of human history, it feels like, to try to walk that tightrope.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
That hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
At times.
Yep, that's true. One fascinating feature that you did mention earlier is this idea of, and I'm putting these in quotes, of being famous. In other words, people coming up to us and talking about the podcast.
Yes.
That's a weird dynamic.
Yes. I've had to switch gears where people will ask me things about the podcast that I don't remember telling that person, right? They'll ask me things that I've said here that they will then come and ask me about. And I have to recalibrate because I just don't have a category for it.
Yeah.
But they want to talk about those things. So
yes. And I've had people ask me or mention things that we've talked about on the podcast, and I go, we talked about that? I don't remember talking about that. No, you talked about that. And then they'll give me a few sentences and that sounds like something I'd say. I believe you. I just don't remember talking about that on the pod. So,
any particular stories stand out of people you've run into?
Well, my favorite one, I won't give names, but there's a kid he's like 5th grade, 6th grade.
I don't know how old he is. Yeah, judging kids' age is not my strong suit.
In our church, who apparently listens to the podcast, goes to our church, and
I know his dad does, certainly.
Yeah, this was maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah,
somewhere around that, sometime this fall. And you and I were standing in the lobby at church, and this kid comes up and he starts talking to me about the podcast, about sports, and we were talking about he's also an Ohio State fan, so we were talking about that. And then you jumped into the conversation, and after you talked for 30 seconds or something, he says, "Man, you sound a lot like the other guy on the podcast."
Yeah, I embrace that role, other guy. Yeah.
About fell over. I'm like, that's because he is the other guy on the podcast. It didn't dawn on him. That was such a great moment. That's one of my favorite stories about the podcast. The other guy on the podcast. That's great. But we've been out and about at churches when we've had a chance to teach or visit for grace and that sort of thing, and had faithful listeners come up and engage us in conversation.
Yeah, I was at a church in Columbus, Ohio. I was doing some teaching, and just on a Sunday morning, and then going to their service. And the worship leader came up to me afterwards and goes, "Hey, so been listening to the pod. How's the grass growing? You know, all those things." And that seems to be the thing that people latch on to.
You're the grass guy.
Yes, apparently. People do mention it from time to time. It does come up in conversation, which I'm happy to talk about it. So
yeah. We took some pictures. We never posted them.
I don't think we ever posted them.
Maybe in honor of the 100th episode, we need to do a little social media posting of some of the pictures of the grass.
Yeah. Well, but it looks a lot better than when we took those pictures. It looks a lot better now than it did then.
Okay. Well, if you want to go home today and take some pictures,
maybe I'll do that.
If you get home before it's dark.
Maybe I'll wait till tomorrow morning.
Okay. Yes. So, but we enjoy it. I mean, it still seems funny to us that that people come up to us.
It's wild to me that people listen.
Yeah, it's fun. Another fun feature of the podcast has been getting to do some interviews.
Now, did we think about interviews before we started? Is that something we talked about?
From my recollection, we had talked about doing interviews, but we had decided early on that we didn't want to do any initially. Like, we wanted to get our own rhythm, the two of us, before we brought a third person into the dynamic, even for an interview. So as best I can tell, I think we've interviewed 4 people.
Yeah, that sounds right. And one I don't even really count. So,
wow. So our first interview was Dane Ortland.
Yeah,
and here I just think we need to remind our audience that we are in part largely responsible for the success of his book, Gentle and Lowly.
Well, you had a copy of it, and you said we should read – because we were looking for a book to read together with our listeners over the summer, basically. Yep. And we chose Gentle and Lowly. And once we chose it and put it out there, it sold out of Amazon.
Yeah.
Before supply chain issues.
Yes, this was not supply chain issues. This was just wild popularity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So – I saw Dane at the ETS conference, and I reminded him that you and I are basically responsible for
what'd he say?
The wild success of his book. And he laughed heartily. He has a very good, hearty laugh. And so he knew I was obviously joking, but he was very appreciative of the role that we played in sending his book through the roof in terms of sales. So I think our next interview technically was Zach from Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah, we interviewed Zach on another podcast of all things.
Yeah. Yeah. So does that count?
I don't know. We did play it on our podcast.
We did. Yeah. So it was a friendly takeover of the Grace Story podcast that that Drew Flam, our vice president of something here at Grace, hosts, where he interviews different people, alumni from Grace, faculty, people connected with Grace. As you might expect, the podcast is called Grace Story Podcast. And so he suggested, or someone in his production team suggested, why don't you guys take the podcast over and you can do an episode? And we coordinated it with Zach from Ohio.
Yep.
Coming to campus, and we interviewed him.
And that was really good. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And that is the only video episode of the podcast that exists.
Yeah.
And you can find that on our YouTube channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you don't know what we look like, that's a way to find out. Then we interviewed Barnabas Piper.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think we talked about the range of his books, but I mean, part of the reason we had him on was that his podcast, The Happy Rant, that he is part of with Ted Kluck and Ronnie Martin, is one of the inspirations for this particular podcast. In fact, I remember when my son started listening to The Happy Rant after our podcast had started, he's like, "Dad, you totally stole their open." Like, well, I adapted it. I didn't, steal it. I adapted it. So, but in any case, Barnabas shares basically almost all of our interests: the sports, the ministry, books, those sorts of things. And so that was a lot of fun to get to talk to him. And then this past summer, we interviewed Jonathan Pennington because we read his book,
Jesus the Great Philosopher.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was a lot of fun, too. I appreciated that.
Do you have a favorite out of that group of four?
I think Jonathan Pennington was probably my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that interview.
I was going to go with Barnabas Piper. But I think all of our interviews have been good. We've enjoyed those.
Yep.
So, from time to time, we do get people who post reviews of the podcast on the different platforms here. And so I thought it might be interesting to go back and look at some of these reviews that people have posted. It can feel a little awkward to read nice things that people say about you. I don't know if you had any particular ones that stood out to you. I
think it's interesting to just looking through them. They start with like oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this. To eventually they start trickling in probably one a month or so. In 2021, it's just like, hey, really enjoy this. This is good. This is helpful. This is, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that it has some staying power,
I think so. I think a consistent the consistent mention of how our friendship comes through in terms of the conversation, and how people feel like they are listening in on a conversation. Yes, obviously we're doing a program, so there is some formality to this at points, but our intention has always been to have the feel of a conversation between two good friends. So, I think this one kind of gets it in terms of the balance between lighthearted sports talk and then serious discussions about scripture, theology, and church life makes this one of my favorite podcasts. I think I also find myself listening in closely to the favorite things segment at the end. So, yeah, just fun to see people resonating with some of those things. Any that you wanted to highlight in there?
No, not in particular. I think most of them are really excellent. I mean, there are some that are simply sports related.
Yeah,
but that's okay too.
I mean, people enjoy taking shots about our either affirming or revolting against our sports preferences. And this is an interesting dynamic. Like we have listeners who don't give a rip about sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm pretty sure it was your suggestion, and I think this has been well received. I've had several people mention this to me. They appreciate now the timestamps that we put in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, we would love for people to listen to the whole episode, but people are like, I don't care about sports. Let me just jump to the main topic today. That's been fun to see. I think even I've heard people say, well, I'm not a sports fan, but I enjoy hearing you guys talk about sports. So what about favorite episodes?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think many of them correlate with some of our most downloaded episodes. So other than our initial episodes, like I think the episode on singleness, while really popular, was also a really good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I've gone back and listened to it, and that's me trying to remember back to episode 5.
Yes.
But beyond that, I think anytime we do anything with human flourishing or human progress or fulfilling of that great commission, we did one episode where we went to humanprogress.org, I think, and talked about the movement of human experience throughout the last 30, 40 years. And I find that stuff fascinating. Yeah. So those are always fun, for me at least. I don't know if our audience finds them that interesting. How about yourself?
I enjoyed – this is also some early ones. We did a 2-part series on work and then a follow-up on rest that I really enjoyed doing. We've had a couple episodes on friendship, one specifically on just friendship in general, and then there was another one, I can't remember the number, on male friendship. Why is it that men in particular seem to struggle to build friendships that I really enjoyed and think we did solid work on. And I enjoyed doing the Grace Story takeover.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
It was weird having other people in the room who weren't part of the conversation, though, because we had people in the room videoing us who weren't joining in.
Yeah.
That was strange.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be that was a little bit of a wrinkle for sure. What about favorite sports memories during the pod era?
Well, I think initially, like everything getting canceled.
Yeah.
Maybe not favorite, but maybe most memorable.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, this is a good place for us to kind of, toot our own horn a little bit here, but like we were way out in front of COVID.
Yeah.
Why were we way out in front of COVID, John?
Well, part of it is my own weirdness, where I'm probably dialed into too many things and too many things going on in the world.
Yeah.
And had a trip to Taiwan coming up, and so I'm like trying to analyze what's happening in that part of the world, and I kept coming across the coronavirus in China.
Yep.
Probably when was that? Early February? I came across that. I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 episodes in.
I think at least early February was probably when, because that would have put us like a month out
from my trip. Yeah.
And you were monitoring and you were starting to get emails from parents and students like, hey, is this still going to happen? What's going on? And at that point, you were just kind of monitoring and saying, well, we're still on for now and we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, that was wild. That was incredibly wild.
Yeah, but even related to sports, I mean, I remember very, very vividly. It was a Wednesday where
the Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, where COVID was building and building, and then it was Wednesday where the Big Ten basketball tournament had started. I had tickets to go the next day with my son and one or two of his buddies, and so we were watching, and then you had it was Rudy Gobert who tested positive for COVID, and what was it, like 2 days before that he had made some pretty disparaging comments about COVID, and kind of like. Was it he licked a microphone or something?
I think he was just touching them.
Yeah, just like clearly intentionally belittling how serious COVID was.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tests positive. And then it was like this –
the man who stopped the world.
It's like this unbelievable like series of dominoes where it's like games are being canceled. And one of the we've
got a booming voice out there
out in the hallway.
Oh my goodness!
It's appropriate on the 100th episode.
Yeah, we got the sign on and everything.
We got the light up. Anyway, where you've got people like games suddenly being canceled, and I remember what was it? Some of the college tournament games, like our school, Grace, was playing in the national tournament, the NAIA national tournament, and if I remember right, they were warming up or about to warm up when they made the decision, we're canceling the tournament, everybody goes home. And some of the games that had already been played for that first round, Grace was about to play. I think they're about to take the floor to warm up, or maybe it started warming up. And it was just like, nope, we're done. Everybody go home.
Well, you know what game tipped off that night before everything got canceled?
I don't remember.
Knicks-Hawks tipped off that night. And they played the full game. I think it was the last basketball game played in February, March, and that was Vince Carter's last game.
Oh,
in Madison Square Garden. Yeah, that was his last game.
What a bizarre way to end your career.
Yeah,
especially someone that significant, Vince Carter. But let's talk about positive sports. Maybe this is related still to the COVID, but since all sports shut down, one of the highlights in one sense during that window was ESPN doing their 30 for 30 documentary. 10 part? Was it 10?
Seven part.
On The Last Dance, the story of the Chicago Bulls and their final championship season. But it went all out from that in terms of going back into the dynasty and that kind of thing, talking about Michael. I thought that was just a fascinating look into the mindset of Michael Jordan. Now, at points it felt a little bit like MJ propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
But that was something that –
I think we even had an episode titled MJ Propaganda.
I think we did. Okay, so beyond that, what are some of your favorite sports memories from the pod era?
Other than just simply sports coming back slowly but surely, and then fans being back, those things have been very exciting. But big moments for me, Steve Cohen buying the Mets out from the Wilpons, which was wonderful, and
beating out Alex Rodriguez,
to buy the Mets. Thank goodness. Him and J-Lo, who have broken up since then, but we're not doing celebrity gossip here.
No,
but
we are not.
Steve Cohen by the Mets, everything that's happened because of that. I mean, he's made major trades. He's signed free agents. He's made the Mets a better team, I think. And then the Knicks made the playoffs for the first time in 10 years, and that felt like a big deal.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. How about yourself?
For me, the big one is Ohio State beating Clemson last year in the playoffs, in the semifinals, because the year before they got robbed, and that felt very much like a vengeance game of we should have beaten you last year, and now this year we went out and dominated you. So that was a fun one. Well, we need to wrap up. We've already gone pretty long here, but one feature of the podcast.
Oh yeah,
that this was your idea, so I want to give you credit. Each episode is in part named after an athlete who wore the number of the episode.
Yep.
So if you go through and look at our show titles, you'll see every episode pretty much has an athlete attached to it.
And I stole that from a Mets podcast.
Okay.
And they quit doing it at like 60 or 70.
Okay.
Just because there aren't many baseball players that wore those numbers.
Yeah. So we managed to make it through all the way from 0 to 99.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those numbers were a bit of a stretch. We struggled. We had some lean episodes. We
had some tough ones,
in terms of that. So what we've decided to replace that with.
Because we're not doing that again.
No.
And the initial plan was we were going to be an every other week podcast,
right?
And we could run that for at least 2 years or at least 4 years,
and
not think about it,
yeah,
for 4 years,
This, life comes at you quickly.
Yeah.
So here's what we decided to replace that with. We are moving to a This Day in History segment.
This day in sports history?
I think we've intentionally left that
vague.
Okay. But I think the idea of sports history, now that I think about it, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So starting next episode, whatever day that the podcast is scheduled to release, we will do a This Day in Sports History segment. So that's what we're going to do to fill that particular segment. So, well, we need to wrap this thing up. So we need to get to our one thing we liked this week. John?
Thanksgiving with the extended family. So we had Thanksgiving with Andrea's parents and grandparents and sister, and that was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Played a lot of games, ate a lot of turkey.
Yep.
Had a pumpkin mousse.
A pumpkin mousse?
Yeah, pumpkin mousse, like a dessert mousse.
Yeah. Okay. Made out of
Made from pumpkin. It was very good. It's a dessert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you first said pumpkin mousse, I thought like
a mousse shaped pumpkin.
Yeah.
No,
no. I was very confused.
They are a scientific family, so it is possible, I suppose. They could engineer some sort of.
Why not? Why not? For me, obviously, I did enjoy time with the family, but we went to a Colts game yesterday. Yeah. So you sent me a text on
Saturday
morning.
Yeah. So we learned Friday afternoon that because I was supposed to go with my parents.
Mm-hmm. You and Andrea. Yeah.
Yep. Me and my wife and my parents we're going to go to the Colts game on Sunday. And we learned Friday afternoon that my dad was medically not allowed to leave the house, if I can say it that way.
Sure, yeah.
And so they were like, "Here are the tickets. Find somebody." I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do?" And so text you. Andrew and I talked about it all Friday night, and then text you Saturday morning.
Yeah. We were honored to make the cut. So we went down, and it
was a full day.
It was a full day. Yep. Ate brunch, I guess, at Bob Evans on the way down, and got to the stadium. I felt like the perfect amount of pregame. Like we got there with maybe like 20 minutes before
kickoff.
Kickoff, so you get to see some of the pregame stuff. But and I had been inside Lucas Oil Stadium before, but not for a football game. And it's a beautiful facility.
It really is, with the windows at the top with some natural light coming through. Yeah.
And we had phenomenal seats.
Mm-hmm. Plywood money, apparently.
Yeah. Yes. 13th row.
13th row.
In the lower bowl. So 13 rows behind the visitors' bench.
About
on the 10-yard line, basically.
Yeah.
And it was a very entertaining game.
Yeah, it was a very good game. You should all go watch the highlights from that game because it was very entertaining.
Back and forth, and final score was 38-31, so lots of points scored. Mm-hmm. And we had great views of a couple of the touchdowns. One in particular, the first touchdown the Colts scored was like a 65-yard touchdown pass.
And you saw it coming.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Saw like, that's a well-thrown ball.
That's part of the beauty of being in person is you can see more of the field than you can on television. And you can totally see the receiver break open and the quarterback see it and start to unload and just see the trajectory of the passing. You can just tell that's going to be a touchdown right there.
I think I don't think I've been that low in a stadium where I have to look up at a deeply thrown ball.
Yeah.
we were pretty close to the field, and it's like, oh, there goes the ball, and you got to look up to see it.
Yeah, it's that plywood money. So a shout out to Scott and Celeste.
Mm-hmm.
We wish you a speedy recovery, but are grateful for the tickets. So, episode 100, John.
Yep, 100.
Yeah, didn't go 100 minutes. Someone asked us if we were going to do that,
gosh,
and
no.
I don't think anyone really wants us to go 100 minutes on that. But we have we have accomplished our mission, I think, for today. Just reflecting on how much we've enjoyed doing the podcast. This is something that you and I look forward to every week. I mean, we joke about it's not easy to come up with content all the time.
And it is a grind. You know, there's some weeks where we're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What am I going to say?
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we do this because we enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And it's not like it's certainly not like we're making money off of this.
No. We're negative money on this.
This is a losing proposition here in terms of financially. But we enjoy it. And we appreciate you as the listeners, whether you've listened to one episode or all 100 of them. And we appreciate you sticking with us and checking in and making us part of your road trips, while you're mowing the yard, doing dishes, or whatever it is you do while listening to the podcast.
Or take notes.
Yeah, taking notes. Sure, absolutely. But we're grateful. We never envisioned it necessarily developing the way that it has, but we are we're thrilled that anybody listens besides our spouses.
My spouse doesn't listen.
Okay.
And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. That does not bother me at all.
Okay. We're amazed that anybody listens that's not that doesn't directly know us. Let's put it that way.
Yep. When I get emails that say, "Hey, big fan of the pod."
Who are you?
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So it's been a blast, and we look forward to, Lord willing, the next 100 episodes. Right?
Yeah. 2 years from now.
Yeah. 23 months from now. Who knows what will have happened in the world? Maybe we'll be on, COVID-21 or COVID-23 at that point. Who knows? Right?
I don't know.
In any case, I think we need to wrap this up. So, again, thanks for listening, and until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.